The Hunters, German U-Boats at War, 1939-1943. This is a game published by Consim Press and distributed by GMT. It is a game in the tradition of games such as the good old B-17. Other games similar to that one came out, such as B-29. This is a game that is based on core ideas that are shared by those games, but here are adapted to a different theme, which is German U-boats. You, the player, are the commander of a German U-boat in World War II, and you are sent around the seas to hunt for Allied ships, and you're trying to sink as many as possible. And you're trying also not to get your U-boat sunk. This is a solitaire game. There are rules for tournament and for two-player games, but this is mainly a solitaire game. You are the commander of your U-boat, and you fight against the AI. The game doesn't come with a board. It comes with a rulebook. Always useful to have one, not a long one, 24 pages with historical notes. And the rules are fairly well written, maybe a little ambiguity here and there, but nothing that I couldn't figure out or that I could not solve by asking a question to John Krantz, the leader, the gray eminence behind the Consim World, the website, and Consim Press. Then you have a log sheet. You will use one such sheet each time that you play the game. There are several available. You can make photocopies, you can print more. Frankly, what I did was simply to take a dry erase board and to write down the information that I wanted to keep track of. I never used those sheets. You have a bunch of player mats, each representing a different model of U-boat, and at the beginning of the game you choose the one that you want to command in the mission that you're going to play. Some are better, some are not so good, but also not all are available at the same time. The player mat for each model will tell you the starting date when that type of U-boat becomes available. The game, if you're lucky, will last until June 1943. That means that the later you start, the less time you have to score points. Also, early on in the war, things are a little easier because the Allies haven't figured out the best ways to defend themselves against the U-boats. Later in war, the Allies have better defenses. So there's an interesting trade-off here. Powerful U-boats that are available later when things are tougher. Less advanced U-boats that you can use for longer, if you survive the long, and that are available when the hunting grounds are a little easier for you to navigate. So you choose your player aid, you choose your mat with the stats for your U-boat. You set it up by placing counters on it. The game comes with nice counters, well printed, nice looking. The counter trace not included in the game. You set up your player mat there. You also have a combat mat. We'll look at it in detail later. Then you have 4 player aids that include the tables that you need to resolve events in the game. Like in games such as B-17 and B-29, the main idea is that you roll dice, you check the results on the tables. Many results will lead you to roll dice on other tables, and the story will develop around the decisions that you make and the die rolls that you roll. Most often around the die rolls. There is definitely a huge component of luck here. You are part of a war which is much bigger than yourself. You're not the leader of the war. You receive orders. You go where they send you. You enter fights that are only in a small part under your control because enemy aircraft may attack you. You may get detected. I think that this random factor, while it may bother some players, kind of captures the feel of the game. If you were the leader of the entire navy, you probably have more decisions to make, but if you're a commander, you go where they send you and you try to survive around when you're surrounded by situations that can be very dangerous and again, very important, they are at least in part outside of your control. Those tables are really key to govern the events in the game. So how does the game work? Well, you will start your patrol as early as possible when your submarine becomes available. You start your first patrol. Suppose you start from September 39. You will record the patrol here. Then at the end of the patrol, you may have to refit. Well, you have to refit for at least a month. If you took substantial damage, your U-boat will be out of order for additional increments of time. Depending on the amount of damage, it may be out for 1 additional month, 2 additional months, several additional months. If it is for out of work for too long, then you simply get a new one, because that one is beyond hope. So if you do not get sunk, or if you do not get captured, the flow of the game will be that you complete a patrol, you spend a certain period of time before you can get into another patrol, you get another patrol, depending on the result, you will have to wait a little bit. So over a period of time, you will have alternating periods of patrols, refit, patrol, refit, patrol, refit. At the end, if you survive for the entire war, the total amount of tonnage of enemy ships that you sunk, and that determines your victory level. If you're captured or if you're sunk, again, you total the amount of tonnage that you sunk, and you see what your victory level is. Leveled victory, that means glory that is awarded to you posthumously if you were sunk. And these are pretty much the main ways in which the game may end. In glory, or much less glory, and sometimes in horrible defeat. Okay, before each patrol, you need to see where your bosses will send you. So you roll on the U-boat patrol assignment. You roll 2d6. Depending on the period in which your patrol takes place, you will be assigned to a different place. Then you look at your player mat there. There is a counter indicating the location of your U-boat. It is in port at the beginning. Suppose that I was sent to the British Isles. Then I place my marker at the beginning of that track. Simply, the game will be played in a number of turns, each indicated by a box that my little marker here will go through. So I start from here. Depending on the period in which I'm playing, that may mean that that's a normal transit or a transit out of the Bay of Biscay. Whichever it is, and well, I will know which it is depending on the period that I'm playing, I will look at the encounter chart, and I will look at the correct column. Regular transit, or Bay of Biscay, or special missions. When you are rolling on the encounter chart, which you will do very often in the game, you roll 2d6, and that tells you what happens in that turn that you are spending in that column, in that area. For example, I am in the transit box. I rolled a 4. I'm in transit, sorry, a 4 and a 2, that's a 6. I rolled 6 in transit. Nothing happens. I simply move to the next box, which is transit again. I roll 8. Transit, 8. Nothing. Now I finally get where I may find some good hunting grounds, because you can see transit will allow you occasionally to find a lonely ship, or more likely you may be detected by aircraft, which is always bad because they try to sink you. Also, if you roll a 12, the first time that you roll that in a patrol, that will result in a random event, and there is a table that you use to resolve those events. They add variety and possible things that happen during your patrol. Fun stuff, always nice to have random events, I like that. Now we are in the British Isles. Now we roll in a different column, and slightly more exciting one. That's what happens here. 11, British Isles. Oh, nope, still nothing. This patrol is pretty uneventful, which I guess may happen. Now we get to the next box, British Isles. 8. Oh, a ship. British Isles 8 ship. This is a lonely ship, poor single ship without escort. This ship will take some beating. But now you get the idea. I could have been luckier and could have found a convoy, maybe a capital ship, which are tough to sink, but they bring you great popularity because of the propaganda meaning of sinking an enemy capital ship. But in terms of damage that you do to the allies, finding a convoy is the best thing. Just a lot of nice, chubby targets. When you encounter enemies, it's time to fight. And that is when you will use this mat here. You will roll on a table to determine the type of ships that you encounter. The table here will tell you, well, the result here tells you ship means a single ship. Sometimes you may get 2 ships. A convoy is always a group of 4 ships. Historically, convoys were larger, but 4 ships are the ones that are available to you as targets for game purposes. You roll to determine if it's day or night. It is always better if it's night. Suppose it is night. If it's day, you have the option of waiting until night, but there's a chance that you will lose your target by then. Then you have to also roll to determine the identity, the type of ships that you have encountered. You roll a d6 for each of the ships that you have encountered. For example, if you're talking about a convoy, there will be 4 of them. And for each ship, you roll a die on this table here. So you will have a mix of small freighters, large ones, or maybe tankers. For each of them, you then roll on another table to determine the exact identity, but most important, the exact tonnage of each. Suppose, for example, I have 2 small freighters, then I roll 2 d10s twice, 1 for each. Suppose I roll 26 and 27. That means that I'm encountering a small freighter that has a tonnage of 3,600, another one with 3,100. Suppose there is also a large one, and I rolled a 37. Ooh, this is a very big one, 18,700. Suppose also that there is a tanker, then there is another table here, and I roll here to determine the tonnage. I write down this information here, this piece of information here, and then I place the corresponding markers, small freighters, light freighters, and tankers on that thing right there. The tankers and the other ships also have a number printed there. Why is the camera moving like that? A number printed there, which indicates the number of hits that I need to score. Small freighters are always 2, large freighters and tankers 3 or 4, depending on how big they are. Then it's time to start, it's time to fight. Of course, there are some decisions here that you have to make. You have to choose the range at which you are attacking. If the enemy ship has no escort, then you could choose to also launch a surface attack that allows you to use gunnery. It's always good to have that extra weapon that you can use when you have the chance of using it, because you don't expend torpedoes, you do not have to worry about dots. If you hit, you hit. But suppose that you don't have the luxury. Then you look at the torpedoes that you have available and you choose how to assign them. You could fire any and all of the torpedoes that are loaded at that point. There will be different rules to follow depending on the ones that you use. For example, using both forward and aft torpedoes in the same attack is a little bit of a risk that may give you penalties. Suppose I only want to fire these 4 ones, and I want to fire 2 of them at the tanker and 2 of them at the freighter. Actually, we kind of imagine that the freighter is a very large one, so I want to invest in a lot of extra damage there. In that case, a single one against a tanker may not be a good idea, so I'll use instead a single one against a small freighter. Gives me better chances of hitting it. A standard combat will work in you attacking first. You attack, you resolve your attack, you track the damage that you inflicted on the opponent, and then the opponent will try to detect you if the opponent has an escort. If you are undetected, the encounter is over, you move to the next box. If you're detected by the escort during the detection phase, they attack you and they may inflict a lot of damage on you, and they may be able to attack you several times in a row. This is the basic idea. Then there are a lot of situations in which, depending on your choices and the results of the dice and the combination of things that you have here to fight against, will result in different courses of actions, in different branching trees of actions. For example, it may happen that you are fighting with a wolf pack, and that will bring you modifications. It may happen that you find a ship without escort, then you do not have to worry about being detected. You may destroy everybody, and that's great for you, hooray. Or it may happen that you decide, if you hit somebody but did not destroy them, you decide to follow them. If you follow a convoy, there's a procedure you have to choose. If you're following, for example, a ship that you damaged but did not sink, so you isolate the target to finish it off, or you may decide to follow the convoy. In that case, it counts as a second battle, and you have to determine your targets again because you're coming at the convoy from a different angle, from a different area. But for now, let's stuck to the standard idea. You attack and then you get detected. Well, then they try to detect you. Also, if you decide to attack at close range, that's great in a sense, but it's also dangerous because the enemy can attempt to detect you before you attack, and then also you will get the attempt at detection after the attack anyways. So if you move very close, easier to hit, but there is that danger. Suppose, again, standard attack, I'm just attacking at medium range. I want to resolve my attacks and then resolve the detection attempt. I pick up the combat tables, which are, where are they? Here they are. For each torpedo that I'm firing, I roll 2d6. I look at the target here, 2d6, and roll dice, apply possible modifiers. If it's a 7 or less, for example, a medium range, it's a hit. 8 or more, it's a miss. As you can see, it's easier or harder to hit depending on your distance. When you're hit with a gunnery attack, then you move to the damage chart. When you hit with a torpedo, you have to roll for each torpedo that hit to see if it's a dud. You roll a die roll for each torpedo. If the result is one of these indicated here, alas, that's a dud, no effect. There are two types of torpedoes: steam torpedoes and electric fueled torpedoes. The steam ones are more accurate, but if you use them during the day, they leave a stream of bubbles behind them, which may make it easier for the opponent to detect you. The electric ones are less accurate, but they are less visible. It's harder for the opponent to detect you. For each torpedo that hit and wasn't a dud, and for each gunnery attack that did hit, you roll on this table, you roll a d6, and you apply the number of damage points to the ship that you are firing against. If you score the necessary amount of hits, then you destroy, you sink that target, and you score the tonnage of that ship. And there may be other advantages. For example, if you sink a capital ship, if not, well, then you go through the detection phase, and then you have a chance of following the convoy, following the bleeding target, things like that. But back to the idea. The core idea is really pretty simple. You're on the table, apply modifiers, apply damage, and then, alas, score the detection chart. You roll 2d6, apply modifiers that may depend on a lot of situations, including, as you can see, the later in the war, the harder it is for you to escape detection. If you go undetected, hooray, the encounter is over. If you are detected, then you roll on the attack chart, and you roll 2d6, apply modifiers, see the number of hits. Once you have the number of hits, you roll on this table here, 2d6, to indicate, but you read one as tens and one as units, and this tells you the type of damage. You will record the damage on that mat there using using damage markers on the specific types of systems that are damaged by the attack. And then there are descriptions of what the damages do, and also what the types of damage do, and also there are ways of trying to fix the damage system as you go during the mission before you have to return to port. Once that attack is resolved, you received your hit. However, it doesn't mean that the opponents are just going to to leave you go home and mend and lick your wounds. They'll try to attack you again. So you go back to this table and you roll again to see if you're detected. Pretty much they keep pounding on you until there is a time when you go back to this table and you go undetected. That means that there may be several attacks in a row, huge amounts of beating may rain on you all of a sudden in a mission that was otherwise completely uneventful. You can't tell how dangerous things are before you really start getting beaten. And of course, the more damage you take, the more bad and dangerous stuff happens to you, the harder it is for you to get out of a sticky situation. Flooding may occur, and flooding needs then to be checked each turn, and flooding, as you can imagine, is pretty dangerous, but also gives you, narratively speaking, a mounting sense of tension. You get hull damage, which again is cumulative. Operating system may take damage, and your U-boat is increasingly less effective. Members of your crew may get severely wounded, may be killed in action, and that also is not good. You yourself, the commander, may get wounded or killed. All sorts of bad stuff may happen. Suppose you survive the attack, maybe you have some targets, some kills that you add to your score, then you go to the next box and you repeat the procedure. Rolling, seeing what happens, either to see if there is an attack or not, to see if you can find a target or not. Go, in this case, to transit, then go back to transit. If you survived all of those things, you go back to port, you refit, which length of the refit is based on the amount of damage that you took. Repeat the procedure until the end of the campaign, either because you survive until the end of the war, or you're sunk, or you are captured by the enemy. This is one fine game. I definitely enjoy playing this game. I like the game very much, and there are a lot of things to like in it. It is a game, not a simulation. That means that there are many things that you can tell have been designed for effect, to create an impression of a situation in you, not to reproduce all of the nitty-gritty details of this or that historical event. And to me that is a bonus, because I think that unless you are a training officer and you need a simulation that is as close to reality as possible, because that may save your life in the future, I do not see the point of adding a million details to a game when those details do not necessarily translate in an improvement in the richness, intensity, and fun of the experience for the player. This game to me is detailed enough and economic enough. The procedures are pretty lean and definitely straightforward. The game feels quite streamlined. The obvious comparison is with B17, which most wargamers have played at one point or another. Haven't played it in a long time, but if memory serves, had the impression that the Hunters is much more streamlined and easier to make work than B17. It is definitely leaner and less clunky than B29, and also when you compare it with B29 and also with B17, I believe there are more decisions here that the players can make. In all of these games, there is the idea that the AI controls the vast majority of things that happen in the game. In B29, the AI controls almost everything that happens in the game, and you're just running alone for the ride, for the experience. Here, there are decisions that you make when it comes to tactical combat to really make the decisions of the weapons that you use, which torpedoes are you going to fire, the distance, and other things that you can decide. when things go south and the opponents start pounding on you and they start raining death on you, there aren't many decisions that you can make, but there is one which is very important, very momentous, which is you can go deeper than it is usually wise to do in order to improve your chances of getting undetected by the people that are pursuing you, which is a very momentous decision indeed, because it's a very risky one. It may be the last decision that you make in the game. So in different phases of combat, from setting up the attack, performing the attack, and even running away from the enemy, there are decisions to make. If you're following a convoy, you have to decide where you want to plan your second round of attacks. Decisions are apparently small, but they're significant. And again, the fact that actually the decisions that you, the commander of the submarine, can make are restricted to the field of a tactical encounter, and everything else that happens in the ocean, in the war, is not something you can control. I'm fine with that. I don't see any problem. That is something that feels historically accurate and that does not burden the design in any way to me. I'm still pretty excited to see how the war progresses, where commanders that they cannot control send me for the next mission. Actually, as the game progresses, you may get, and you should get, promoted. Then you get some chances of choosing your own patrols. So there's a little bit more negotiation there between you and the entities above you. But still, there are things that you cannot control. But that create a story around you, which to me is really important. This game has a very strong narrative feel. This is a storytelling game in a sense. The game tells you a story that you interact with, a story within which you make your decisions. I compare the game to B-17. Another comparison that people will make is with U-Boat Leader, the game that came out a couple of years ago by DVG Games. I like both, and I think that they feel very different. The theme is the same, some of the core ideas are the same. U-Boat Leader has a board where you resolve combat, so you physically see the counter representing your U-boat, and then the enemy escorts, the vessels that you're trying to sink. The pieces move on the board. It's like a micro mini war game that you set up every time, which has more of a tactical sense than what you have here. Things are more abstracted in the Hunters. Because of that, however, it takes a little more time to set up each battle, to resolve each battle. You have that sense of depth, which is a bonus. On the other hand, the Hunters has a more economic, a more streamlined way of resolving things, which can be implemented faster, more elegantly, more economically, and still creates a strong narrative. So if you want something that is more visual, has that spatial aspect, that maneuvering aspect, then U-Boat Leader may be more up to your alley. But the Hunters, I think, is more likely to be a crowd pleaser. Somehow I see the Hunters being more appealing to people. I think that they are both fine additions to the collection of any wargame or anyone who is interested in solitaire wargaming and or in submarine warfare. I enjoy playing both games. But today we're talking about the Hunters specifically. So about this one, this is definitely a fine game. I enjoyed playing it. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the decisions that I had to make. Rules were fine. Components are beautiful. But what happens here really is that the story doesn't take place on the board, on the combat map. It takes place in your mind as you create a story from the components, from the rules, from the mechanics. And the story that is created here is one that is exciting, has moments that are highly cinematic, moments that are extremely pulse-pounding moments. You really feel the threat of sinking. Things go bad around you, things explode, water is coming in, people are dying. You do not know if you're going to make it out of that specific bad situation in which you are. You forget for a moment that it is a game. You get excited as if you were experiencing a movie. I wouldn't say as if you were there, because that would be absurd and offensive to the people that were there. But I think you get close enough that you get a hint of that thing. You get a hint of the excitement without the actual danger. That is one of the advantages that we have from wargaming, and this is one of the advantages that you have from the Hunters. A really good game. I enjoyed it a great deal. I highly recommend it.